and beat Newton Falls 8-0. They scored exactly 4 touchdowns in 3 games, but they won them all. The season from hell was over. The day after Dave Slagle and Andy Hedge were named All-Conference, Parrish began planning the next season. And this time, he had a real chip on his shoulder. Jim Berner, Frank Omagrosa, Bob Leahy, Jim Rikashevsky, Bruce Rively, and a baby-faced rookie with a bad mustache, fresh out of Hiram College, named Marty Hill. It was a bad mustache. You reached puberty late, didn't you? Except for Windham legend Jim Berner, who glued to Windham athletics for over half a century, Parrish had assembled the youngest coaching staff in Portage County. And then he had them pose for a group picture in coaching shorts, which today would delicately be called Daisy Dukes. I'd be embarrassed if I was there. That's one of the pictures the record shooter chose to run. Everybody in the county knows what men they are now. Parrish gave those boys a job to do. Build the best damn football team that Portage County had ever seen. First, Parrish had to replace Matt Myers and Andy Hedge. Tough to do with only one player, but he knew exactly who he wanted. Now, Mike McCoy was the fastest kid in the school. A free-spirited rebel without a cause who quit the team in his sophomore year after a kerfuffle with Coach Bruce Rively. I don't know the details, but I do know it happened. Mike sat out his junior year getting into trouble the way only a kid in Windham could get into trouble. Parrish went to him and told him that he was the piece that he needed to complete the team. McCoy resisted, Parrish insisted, and to this day, McCoy says that the persistent coach changed his life by refusing to take no for an answer. Other holes were filled by kids with immense potential. Espy Hedge, Ken Dunn, and Tom Little were gone, but coming up were strongman Tom Denver, as rugged an athlete as his dad had been 20 years earlier. Jim Christopher, with the fastest feet the coach had ever seen on a lineman. And Dave Gearhart, the run of the offensive line. And since both Gearhart and center John Tricino carried 4.0 grade point averages, the Bomber line could outsmart any oath that played. Dave Sabula, Tim Hill, Mark Hedge, Bill Roop manned the defensive secondary. Roop had the best hands on the team. He'd had key interceptions the year before and would have 6 more before this season ended. And if any team got pass happy, they'd have to go through them. That's assuming they could get past the first 2 levels of Parrish's 4-4 defense. Rob Garrett, Tom Denver, Jim Christopher, and Bill Rice, a backstreet brawler nearly as wide as he was tall, but who had dropped 30 pounds of baby fat in the weight room, were nearly impregnable on the line. Gearhart, Flegel, Higgins, and Lyons were probably the best linebacking corps in the state of Ohio on any level, and that includes some small colleges. Offensive line, check. Defense, check. And with a mobile offense featuring Lyons, McCoy, and Tim Hill running the ball, and Flegel both running and tossing to lightning-fast Bill Root, Junior Hal Clark, and Rob Garrett, Parrish thought his coaches had done what he told them to do, build a perfect high school football machine for a league in which they would play every single game against a school bigger than they were. He even scheduled a scrimmage against Ravenna, the biggest school in the county. That scrimmage got buried in the news that Richard Nixon had become the first president of the United States to resign. The Windham Band had 82 members that year, and Parrish had to roll his eyes when director Bonnie Furr cut into his preseason routine. Now, Furr had gone to the Board of Education and complained that the rotting band bleachers were putting splinters in her bandster's butt, to paraphrase her angry tirade. So a troop of tradesmen cordoned off the end zone to prepare new quarters for those precious posteriors. And brand new lights had to be installed at Ed Little Field before the season began. Now, back on the gridiron, in his preseason comments, Parrish wouldn't deny that the Bombers were the league favorites. But he told the Record Courier that his boys had found the magic ingredient that they had lacked the year before. It's maturity. He said, these boys have made up their mind that this will be Wyndham's year. The Record Courier went out on a limb and predicted a possible state playoff berth for Class A Wyndham, if they could knock off defending champ Field, the only AAA team in the league, in the second week of the season. So, what was Parrish to do when, as Windham opened at home against Southeast, Barry Lyons got knocked out with a concussion, and Dave Flagle got thrown out of the game for taking a punch at a pirate cheap shot artist? He went to his bench with a smile, putting in Kevin Cott, who got all that experience the year before at quarterback, and Dave Sabula at running back, and the Bombers amassed almost 400 yards that night in total offense, rolled to a 30-0 opening game win. But they'd done that the year before, too. And with Field coming to town, Stan Parrish would face the toughest test of his coaching life. Once again, Dale Criz and Stan Parrish played, "You're better, no, you're better, no, you're better," in the press. Field had barely squeaked by Streetsboro in their opener, and maybe Criz, for the first time in his life, really was worried. He should have been. The game was an ugly classic. Parrish's post-game comment summed it up. That was sweet. We made a million mistakes and still blew them out of there. I've changed my philosophy, he said. I used to yell at my kids when they fumbled, but now I realize they're going to fumble. We play aggressive football, and as long as we do, we'll make some mistakes, and then we're going to make up for them. The Bombers had beaten last year's champs 23-11, and not only had the team finally grown up, so had their coach. Windham rang up over 300 yards of offense, but Parrish said simply, it was the defense that won the game. We turned off the best offense in the league. So now the 1974 season became a weekly game of King of the Hill. Every other team wanted the honor of knocking Windham down to size. New faces began to ring the field during those practices. Dozens of Ohio colleges sent scouts sniffing around Lyons, Garrett, Higgins, Christopher, and especially Dave Flagle. The Record Courier reporters hyperventilated with each new article about the team, and the coaches of upcoming foes began tearing their hair out. Now, the first-year coach of the next opponent, undefeated Bridgetown, pleaded, what will it take to stop Windham? A Mack truck? Hell's Angels? Yeah, that might do it. I sent my scouts to the Fields game, and they thought the Browns-Bengal game had been switched to Friday night. I kind of choked on my coat when I heard that. They're at least 2 touchdowns better than any other team in the league. Now, despite losing Tim Hill during the game, the Bombers won the battle of the unbeatens 12-7. Although it took 2 fourth-quarter fumble recoveries by Tom Denver and a graceful Dave Flagle pass to Hal Clark in the end zone to cement the win. As Parrish said after the game, the mark of a champion is to come back. tonight we had the poise when we needed it. A fourth straight undefeated team was up next, arch enemy and perennial league contender Garfield. And it will go in the record books as perhaps the greatest Bomber G-Man game ever. Played in a steady rain at Garrettsville, the Bombers left the field with a 14-12 win. And the record courier found Parrish slumped against the wall, almost at a loss for words, which never happened. I'm shell-shocked. I'll never recover from this game. If you weren't here, you'd never believe it. It was like a high school Super Bowl. Whichever team had the ball last was going to win it. Now, Parrish was stunned because his vaunted offense was almost non-existent. The Garfield defense was ready for every weapon they had. The Bombers did not have a single first down in the first half. They only had 2 first downs in the whole game. But the Windham defense rose to the occasion and bailed them out every time. Tom Denver fumble recoveries and a blocked punt gave the Bombers the ball as the fourth quarter wound down. Bill Root pulled in a 41-yard pass to set up a Barry Lions plunge with a minute left on the clock. And after a 3-hour high school football game, Stan Parrish's assistants almost had to carry him to the locker room. But their reward came 3 days later. For the first time ever, the Windham Bombers cracked the top 20 in the UPI state poll. Even better, they were in first place in the playoff computer rankings. Playoffs that only 4 teams would qualify for. Winless Crestwood wasn't much of an obstacle, being held to minus 24 yards rushing and giving up 2 interceptions as the Bombers gave a 20-0 homecoming win to Queen Laura Sabula. It was a good victory, despite Windham fumbling 7 times, which is still the school record. Capitalist Waterloo didn't stand a chance the next week, losing 33-0 in a Flagel Lions Root McCoy Marquette onslaught. Mogador, which had 6 consecutive wins over Windham, was dismissed brutally when Barry Lions went berserk, scoring 17 points, including 1 play in which he went over the end line with 11 Mogador Wildcats clinging to him. In a 29-0 thrashing that left Mogador coach Norm Winkle dazed. It was like standing in front of a freight train, he said. Parrish didn't disagree. That was one of the most awesome displays of offense I've ever seen. Our offensive line was outstanding. And Coach Jim Berner called the offensive line of Tracino, Higgins, Gearhart, Christopher, Garrett, and Rice the best I've ever seen at Windham. Even better than when we were co-champs in 1966. And that is the only quote for which Tim Staum and I were never able to forgive Jim Berner. Barry Lions had now taken over the scoring lead in the PCL, and the UPI had really started to take notice, elevating the Bombers to 6th place in the state poll. After their 20-6 win over Streetsboro, in which the Rockets were so intent on stopping Lions that Flagel completed 75% of his passes, the Bombers were the first undefeated PCL champions in half a decade. And for the first time in his career, Stan Parrish relaxed with reporters as he clutched the game ball as if it was his firstborn child. Is that the ball right there, Stan? That's the ball he was holding right there. When I took over 3 years ago, there were a lot of doubters that we'd ever win a title. Last year was a disaster. And this year could have been the same, except for the fact that these kids worked so hard for this. We have some outstanding players, and some players who are maybe not so good. But every one of them has given me 120%. Every time we've had our backs against the wall, these kids have bounced right back. PCL schedule was done. Windham was the league champion. The Bombers had 2 of their 3 preseason goals done: to win the PCL and to set a school record for most wins in a season. Just 1 goal remained, 3 games away, the state playoffs. 2 more games against Trumbull County teams remained before them. Bigger schools that could give them loads of computer points, but also a lot of trouble. Because the first one was against LeBray, the Trumbull County League champion. And the Vikings had just been upset by Newton Falls, who would be Wyndham's final opponent.